definitely. All right, cool. All right, welcome to the Black Swan Bets and Big Apple Collective mashup episode for the NBA Draft Special. We're just going to go over 10 of the prospects in the NBA Consensus Mock Draft, the top 10. And I'm Danny from Black Swan Bets, and I'm joined by Seppo from the Big Apple Collective. How are you going today, Seppo?
Fantastic. Going to be excited tomorrow when the Wizards take some backup center. Can't wait.
Yeah, they are bound to do that. Hopefully, he at least started in his college team, but probably won't start in the NBA. But we'll see how we go. Obviously, the Big Apple Collective, been going really well, not just with the betting tips, but with the podcasts and the write-ups on the NFL. So we're looking forward to getting you guys onto the NBA now and seeing what you've got to offer there, because the NFL's been it's been going gangbusters. So let's see what you got on the NBA for us.
I'm very excited to see Ray write about the NBA and what gets through editing, what hits the editing room floor, what gets burnt, what gets saved. It's going to be very, very interesting coming up. Ray is a natural at football, even though I've been betting on it longer than he has. Just a natural. I love my NBA totes, so really looking forward to that. That's probably the most value that I bring to any sports conversation as far as value goes. It's total combined NBA, next NFL, total combined, and then comes everything else pretty much the same.
Yeah, I definitely know you follow the NCAA more than any of us at Black Swan Bet, so really looking forward to getting maybe your views on some of the players. I'm sure you've seen more than all of us combined to really focus on the pros, so that'll be good. And I will say that letting Ray self-edit a few, which is Ray's caveman, letting him self-edit a few things was a bit scary. But when I checked them, they all seem to be above board and on the up and up. So let's just, here's hoping we don't get cancelled, but I think it should be okay.
It's when you put the chain on a dog and really restrict it that it starts to act up. Give it a little leeway. It's like, okay, I like the freedom. I'm going to myself. But if you put too much of a leash on them, caveman's going to run wild. That's part
definitely. You can read those at blackswanbets.com under the news. Always got Monday Night Football, always got Thursday Night Football previews. Got some good bets in there, but also they're definitely pretty funny. We do cut some of his jokes, and just, because we don't want our internet provider to, cut us off. But they definitely get a good laugh. So blackswanbets.com for the news section. And I'll give a shout out to your podcast, which is the Big Apple Collective, APPEL. You can look that up on anywhere you get your podcasts. And right now, you guys are doing every Sunday NFL, every game. You guys are doing a preview. So I would encourage anyone to listen to that. But for now, we're talking NBA. We're talking draft. So what we'll do, we'll go through the top 10. We'll give our view on if we think that the team should be taking them or if we have someone higher, and just I guess what we can kind of expect to see from these players in our predictions. I'm sure we're not always going to agree, but I know we have coached together before, so we're somewhat on the same page. So I'll be interested to see where we don't agree. So let's kick it off. The mock drafts, 75% of them for the number one draft, Minnesota Timberwolves, all think Anthony Edwards is going to be the pick. Obviously, he's guard, 6'5", freakish kind of talent. I think the most unspoken thing is how good he stops. He stops like Luka and he stops like Harden. He's in the 99th percentile when they did athletic testing for stopping. So that gives me a bit of hope that maybe he could be as good as the hype when you combine that with some of his other tools. The bookies have him $1.72. I don't think there's value there. I think there's too much risk the pick gets traded, but I think it's priced relatively correctly. I think Melo at $2 is too short. So that's the basic information. I'll kick us off with Anthony Edwards. I don't have him number one on my board. I have him number two, but it's not completely awful. I have them in the same tier. I have him and LaMelo as the top two clearly. So it's not an awful, an egregious pick that I would, be really unhappy with. He very well can end up being the best player in the draft. I really do like some of the big games he had in the big competition, like against Michigan State, where he just went off and had like 37. He was hitting threes. He was doing it all. And you just saw his ability to stop. He could stop so much quicker that he was open whenever he wanted. I think his talent is off the chain. But I think his most likely outcome is maybe someone who makes an all-star game, but is a pretty good contributor the whole time. I would be surprised. I don't know if I'll be that surprised if he's making multiple All-Star games, but I just think, he's maybe one of these guys. Is he that passionate? He seemed to have some confidence issues, so I could see him getting up there like 1 or 2 years, but maybe not, pushing through to that upper echelon. I think high end, poor man's James Harden. Low end, it could be pretty low. I think maybe Monta Ellis, scoring but not helping anyone win. I think that could be the low end. But overall, 50-50, which is more likely, I think he's going to be pretty good. I think a lot of the Andrew Wiggins comparisons are a bit unfair. I don't buy into that. So I don't have him number one, but I think overall, freakish talent, and I don't think it's an egregious to take him up there. Where do you sit on Edwards? Are you on Team Edwards, or are you selling his stock?
I'm buying more because the tier isn't that high of a tier. If you want to kind of bring it out for the decade, how you would make some tiers as far as the draft goes. He is the top. I have him second in that top tier. But if you wanted to kind of stretch it out a little bit, I don't think he would be anywhere near the top two tiers because of the risks of him not being able to shoot off the dribble as well against other elite defenders and athletes. And I'm not sure about his finishing around the rim, how creative he is. It's an interesting thing that he shot a lot off the dribble because the rest of his team wasn't very good, so he had to do something. They're going to wall off the paint. Other teammates are going to make the shot. So sure, I have to pull up, sometimes really well from the elbow. I love to see. It's possible that he makes a few All-Star teams, as you said, but I just see a decent amount of risk with him not being that tall and having a lot of weight, good weight, but a lot of weight on his body already. How that second contract is going to go. Can he be a playmaker? Who exactly does he guard on defense? Is he going to guard wings? He's quite short for guarding bigger players. If he fills out even more, he's really going to have to work on post defense somehow. Even though he's 6'5", 225, I could see him getting up 42, 50. So conditioning is going to be a thing. He can hit shots off the dribble with his wind-up jumper. I don't understand how. Do you understand it, Danny?
No. I think I do actually. I think it was a thing I mentioned about him being in the 90th percentile for stopping speed.
Yeah, for sure. So he can still get that distance, eh?
Yeah, because he just stopped so much earlier. That was when they sent Harden to the sports science, and Harden was like apologizing when he went in. He's like, I really don't know why they sent me. I'm really not that athletic. He was almost embarrassed to have been sent there. And they tested him and they said, we've tested 2,000 athletes here, and you literally stop quicker than anyone we've ever seen. Like, he's the quickest at stopping. And it kind of made you think, oh, wow, that's a skill. Because, if you stop and they don't, you're open. So, and Edwards is 99th percentile in that same skill. Luka Doncic, I haven't heard testing on him, but I would assume is another one who uses that. But the thing with Edwards, compared to those guys, much more athletic. Not as skillful. Actually, Harden was a pretty good athlete, but not like Edwards. But Edwards is not as skillful, and he hasn't had that just, pure motor that you would kind of see on some other guys. So I think that's why he makes those jump shots. I think he's just a lot more open than people realize. And I think that's going to make him really hard to guard at any level.
Exactly. There's some kind of Glenn Robinson, a little bit of poor man's Tracy McGrady, where he can shoot over other wings. It's just, can he stay healthy enough? Can he work hard enough? As you said, not that he was a bad teammate or anything. He was a great teammate, but lack of effort at times, lack of hustle at times. That's not something you want from a number one overall pick, unless it's a Ben Simmons situation where that team was just so bad and he just checked out halfway through.
Yeah, but I think we're seeing problems with Simmons now, though, that were kind of washed over, and they washed over in his rookie year, like wouldn't dive on the floor at all. And now it's like, oh, that seems like kind of who he is. So I think you're right to bring it up, because it can be the difference between being a max player who's like, are we sure this guy's worth it, but we have to pay him, and being a max player where it's like the player's getting ripped off because he's only allowed to earn that much money. You can't pay him more. And I would say Simmons is like, he's a max player because you have to give it to him, but I don't know if he's worth it. And so that's the kind of thing that can be the difference. His contract will be the same. I think it'll be a max contract second time, but it's like, is this a bad contract, or is this like, I will gladly give it to him? So some interesting points there. So you didn't have him number 1 on your board. You had him number 2 as well?
Correct.
Okay. But do you think the Wolves will be making a big mistake if they take him, or do you think it's not so bad?
No, it's not so bad. I originally thought it would be a huge mistake, but as I've watched a few more of his games and different highlight reels from different levels of his career, I think it was more situation why his defense wasn't as good as the tape could have shown. Because he was taking on an offensive role. He wasn't used to playing that kind of a role, even in previous years. So it was very hard, a freshman to come on and be the lead offensive and defensive player and make all those shots off the dribble and take that many shots. Some of those games, he's shooting 24, 28 shots, which freshmen should really be doing, especially off the dribble. And it doesn't look great. And I think sometimes we judge as coaches and GMs a little bit if it doesn't look good, even if it's successful.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would say one thing of interest with him, the more I see of him, the more I actually like him. He's not someone who I've seen like a bunch, and now I start to get lukewarm, or I stay the same, or I just like I genuinely seem to like him every time I go and do some more research on him, or even just listening to other people who are seeing more of him that I kind of like their opinions. I think they're worth listening to. The more I listen, I'm like, yeah, that's right. So I start to like him a lot more. I think clearly number 2 on my board, a lot of gap to number 3, but I'm with you. So speaking of number 2 on the board, and I think this is our guy that we have, but the mocks have the Golden State Warriors taking James Wiseman. Obviously, this pick could get traded, but 12 out of 12 mocks that NBA.com surveys had him, which is pretty unusual unless it's like they've said it publicly, and they haven't said anything. He's a center, played at Memphis, pretty good athlete, really. Like I think he's a really good athlete. I think he's got a lot of the tools, kind of like DeAndre Ayton. A couple of years ago, I kind of think he's someone like that, and Ayton looks like he's progressing pretty nicely. $1.55 at Sportsbet to go number 2, which is way too short. Gambling wise, I think there's value at betting LaMelo Ball at $3.92, because I think there's potential for trade partners and whatnot to take it. So I think $1.55 is way too short, but it seems like everyone knows something we don't, and that there's some kind of almost set in stone James Wiseman to the Warriors. I kicked us off with Anthony Edwards. I'll let you kick it off with Wiseman. Where do you stand? Is this a good pick?
No, definitely not a good pick. Can't take a center this high unless it's Anthony Davis or Tim Duncan, or if you really want to call him one when he was a point guard his rookie year, LeBron. That's pretty much it as far as centers go. Kevin Durant, if you want to say, he's always lied. He's 7 foot tall. He's not no 6'10", 6'11". Any other tall players that are worth it these days. I like him. He's as you said, very, very good athlete. Another lefty, just like Aiden. Similar style of player. He's actually pretty skilled with the ball, even though very, very sloppy. He does have some potential to be a creator 6, 8 years down the road, especially on the short roll in a couple years. Decent vision, but no value here. I think part of the reason why all the mocks have him is they either think the Warriors are going to take him because they have to take a center somewhere, so why not draft one? Or the Bulls or the Hornets are going to trade up and take him anyway if the Warriors want to trade down, even though I don't see great trades available for it. I think it's quite interesting. Our next player that we'll talk about, it's a similar situation, not the same, as Aiton versus Doncic. Of do you take the center that you think is really, really great and talented, or the guard with possible superstardom ahead, or pretty high floor, going to be a good player for you, handle the ball, make some good plays. And I think everyone else is saying the same thing's going to happen. And why go against history? So I don't like the value of the bet, but if you got in early enough, a good bet.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen the Warriors seem to draft guards and wings earlier, and they draft bigs later. I mean, when you look at the rookie scale, which I just brought up here, this guy's going to make $7.2 million his first season. I mean, the Warriors, they have some salary cap issues. Like, they don't have a lot to spend. They really want to spend that on a guy who's like maybe not good enough to be a starting center. Maybe he's a low-end starting center his first year. Granted, in a few years, I think he'll probably be a top 15 center. Not sure he'd be an all-star, but I think he could be a top half center, maybe even a top 10 center. But, you're talking third year, $8 million. Then fourth year, it's closer to $10 million. And so, I just don't know if that's the kind of money you want to be spending on a center who may or may not work out. A guard who may or may not work out, a lot more valuable than a center. So I think as much as if I was ranking centers in the drafts, bigs, I'd have him number one. As much as that is true, when I look at the 10 players we took out of the consensus, I have James Wiseman number 7, but he is the first of the bigs, of the 3 bigs. So I just think there's value in betting on LaMelo Ball to go here, just for the fact that the Warriors have done this before. They've always picked guards early in the draft, or wings, and they've always taken centers late. So it seems like they understand the value proposition of that, and it seems to be the teams that take centers are the bad teams. It's like Phoenix taking, because, we're not sure Luka will fit with Devin Booker. It's like, I'm pretty sure you'd like to have like a top 5 player, like next to maybe top 10 player next to Devin Booker. You know what I mean? So
you could play Luka at center. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think there's much excuse for not taking the best prospect and the most valuable prospect that gambles in the right positions. So I think I don't like that for Wiseman. The idea that he's going to help the Warriors win now, they need a center. If they're going to spend $7 million, I don't know if that's the way to go. They could use their trade exception to try and get, a $10 million center if they really wanted, who would actually be worth it. Like a center you could get for $7 million in the open market, it'll be much better than James Wiseman this year, which is an important year for them, given the age of their team and this and that. So I don't think he's a player of the future for them either. I wouldn't be taking him. I'd be taking Edwards or Ball. Whoever isn't taking number 1, I'd be taking it, starting the season with them, maybe trading them if I can get something to help me win the title this year, or maybe that's that's next generation. Maybe the Warriors can use this number 2 pick, which they did really well to get, as a potential drafting a star. I think that's how you keep things going. So, I don't love this, but I like Wiseman as a center. Not a huge fan of the value play. So Charlotte Hornets, LaMelo Ball is mocked to go in 2/3 of the draft at number 3. I think one draft has him at 4, and then the other ones have him at 1. Obviously, he's a point guard, probably the most well-known player. We saw him playing in Australia at Illawarra Hawks, or the Hawks, they were known. 261 to go number 3, probably not worth it. There's just too much variables. He could get picked number 1. There could be teams trading up for him. So I don't think there's value there. Potentially some value on Wiseman going here, though, at 370. So if you believe that the Warriors are most likely to take, the guard wing and not worry about fit, but worry about value to the organization, which they seem to do a good job of, then I think, potentially Wiseman to the Hornets makes sense. I would hope the Hornets would take Wiseman. They would take, one of the other guards. But, they don't have a great record of drafting. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made that proposition. I mean, it may turn out to be right, like we may be wrong. But I think, we definitely both believe guards, wings, unless it's like Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
Or Tim Duncan or someone's really special. like Hall of Fame potential.
Mm.
So yeah, LaMelo Ball, for me, he's number one on the draft board. I just think his high end is like multiple All-Star games. Reminds me of Jason Kidd. He's probably a better scorer than Kidd was at the same point. Jason Kidd actually was amazing when he was 18, 19 as well. He's not one of these guys that developed like Kidd was amazing in high school. So actually quite a few similarities, both out of California, and amazing vision. LaMelo is not always tuned in off the ball and on defense, but when he is, it looks really good. Like we saw at Illawarra, great backdoor cuts, and things like that. So I actually think there's a lot to work with. There's a lot of things that if he picks up some of those tools, he could be really, really good, like a top 10, top 5 point guard and possibly making a few All-Star games. I'm not sure if he's an All-NBA player ever, but I think the ceiling is pretty high. And I think the likelihood of being a max contract at some point is also pretty high. I don't think his low is that low either, So I don't think his floor is that low. I'm pretty high on LaMelo. I don't worry too much about the outside noise, LeVar and Alonzo and all this. I think he's a young guy. I think he's confident. Connection we kind of knew from the team he played at said he was an absolute workhorse. He was super professional. And that team had 3, maybe 4 ex-NBA players on it, plus some veterans from the league here. Like the team didn't do great. Those guys were obviously older and this and that, but he still played with, NBA veterans, David Anderson and such, who respected him and thought, they liked him, so they weren't like, I don't want to play with this kid. They liked him. So I think that says a lot more than, what the media might say about his questionable maturity and this and that. It's like, well, guys that played in the NBA were happy to share a locker room with him and thought he was working hard and was professional. So I like him. Are you in or out? Are you a big baller?
I don't have any of the merch yet. Maybe one day, once I'm a millionaire, I can splurge on the baller brand. Until then, I am a very, very big fan. I wasn't originally until I actually saw him this year, and so professional. If he was a head case, if he was trouble in the locker room, if he didn't train hard, if he didn't show up for training on time, that would have leaked out by now. There would have been stories and anonymous sources, and all of it would have been all over every single internet site. Instead, you hear nothing.
Yeah, because that's what everyone wanted, right? Everyone wanted that. People wanted him to fail, and not a bad word came out about him out of that team.
Exactly. There was a few things of, he left early. Well, he was hurt and the season was over. American imports do that all the time.
He also donated like a month of his salary, because there was some in the area they were having some trouble with some natural disasters and bushfires. And he's like, well, next young me making millions, so I don't need this money that you guys are paying me. Give it to the firefighters to help them out. So you can say he left early, but I think his character held up pretty well.
Exactly. Really good teammate. When they were, especially second, third quarter, games close, he's cutting backdoor like a demon. He can play without the ball. It's going to be him on the baseline, short kind of floaters that he doesn't like contact. The only really big downside I have. But even if he doesn't like contact, his floor is still pretty high for me. He's ambidextrous, not amazing finisher, but I think he can become pretty good. His touch is pretty good. Amazing court vision, as you said before, just like Jason Kidd. I would take him number 1, just like you. I wouldn't really even worry about his second contract either. I think he's going to be a professional. I think him and Lonzo, he's going to be the best ball. I think Lonzo's going to help him and really push him. LeVar has been pretty quiet from what I've heard, and I don't think either kid really cares, but LeVar says they're going to live their own life. I really, really like someone going all out to trade up for him. I really hope some team is like, hey, we're going to pull our Trae Young trade, our Luka Doncic trade a few future assets, and target him if he doesn't go 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, the Bulls or the Pistons, if they could trade up to get him, Yeah, I think the Pistons, I don't know if they'd want to give up next year's draft pick because I feel like with Ball, they're not going to be that good.
Yeah.
They'll have a chance of getting another good one, but could give up this year's pick and one in a couple years. But maybe there's someone on their team that the Timberwolves would like to have. There might be a player that the Timberwolves think can really help them. I wouldn't be giving up Blake Griffin unless it was for like some kind of haul. Not a haul, but like a medium haul. Like I think Griffin would be pretty good at Minnesota if he comes back. But yeah, I think there's definitely teams should do that. As you look now to the next couple slots, these we can do pretty quickly because I know your opinions on the next two guys are the same as my ones pretty much. They're not great. Chicago Bulls at 4, a tip to take Denny Avdija, and Cleveland Cavs at 5, a tip to take Obi Toppin. Now, there is a little bit of value betting here potentially for the 4th pick. Patrick Williams, there's a lot of rumors and a lot of excitement that the Bulls might pick him if they're still on the board. They haven't traded it. That's $5 at Top Sport. So I think there's value there. And for Cleveland's pick, 5, Isaac Okoro at $14 on Sportsbet. I think there's value there too. If they make a good assessment and they can see that Okoro is potentially a really good player, I think there's potential to draft him a lot higher. A lot of people have him high on the boards, but the mocks don't seem to have him that high, but a lot of individuals really like him. So my quick wrap on these two, 5, Cleveland Toppin. I just think he's not that good. I think he doesn't have much of a future in the NBA. He's got some physical problems in terms of his high center of gravity, and he's not agile. He can't move laterally. He's too skinny, so he can't defend anything on the outside, can't defend anything on the inside, and he has no defensive instincts. Offensively, he's actually quite the opposite. Like he's got some pretty cool moves. Not really much post game in the sense that he can't move anyone, but he can shoot a little bit of a turnaround shot. But it's all he gets to because he doesn't have any strength. Not great at attacking, but you feel like that could come along because he does have this kind of offensive base, and his shot I think could end up being okay. He would have to become such a good offensive player to be able to live on the court, because even in the regular season he'll get played off the court. Where that only happens in the playoffs. I think Tobin, scrub, maybe bench minutes on a bad team. At best, like a poor man's John Collins. Like at absolute best, I think he's the most likely to bust out of this group. And and then Denny quickly. I just think he doesn't have an elite skill. He's like 5 and 6 out of 10 at everything. Good player, smart player, could fit in the regular season, but I just don't see how he helps you win. Like, what does he do? He's a classic European. He fits into everything. Like in the European game, they play so evenly amongst the team, and he can slot in everywhere. So he probably doesn't make a team that much worse in the regular season. They're a good team. He'll fit in. He'll get the ball to the star players. He'll knuckle down on defense. He'll do his part. But I'm just not sure what he's going to bring in the playoffs. So I think he'll probably have a career, but I think it's as a bench guy. Maybe even on a good team, but I don't think he's playing in any competitive playoff series unless he really develops some kind of elite skill. But I think he's right to get drafted in the top 15, maybe top 20. But I would be very surprised if he comes on as worthy of a number 4 pick. So that's my, I guess, double negative. Denny and Obi Toppin. What's your play on those guys? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think these guys have the upside? Or are you with team negative with me?
Gonna be a negative Nancy as well here. Obi Toppin reminds me of a taller Kevin Martin. All offense, no defense at all. But at least Kevin Martin, it's easier to hide wings. Kevin Martin could at least run a little bit. Obi Toppin has just no running ability unless it's to the rim without the ball. He's not going to be able to chase wings around on the outside in any way off of screens. As you said, that high center of gravity is really, really going to hurt him under the basket. Where do you play him? Maybe on the wing in a zone, but then if you make that zone collapse and rotate, he's toast. He's not going to help at all. The rebounding might translate. We'll see, but I don't think he's going to get the minutes no matter where he gets drafted. I see bust all over this.
Yeah. I'm not even sure you can hide him in the zone, right? If you put him at center, they're just going to send a 7-footer to go bash him out the way and get a layup. If you put him on the wing, and the coach just going to put a guard on his wing, swing the ball and straight line drive. So, in the zone, you should be able to hide him. I think in the zone, they're just going to point of attack him. So, I really hope that Cleveland don't take him. It'd be great to see Cleveland do something, but it would be peak, Cleveland. Worth saying Chicago have a different front office now. So, potentially they're going to draft more like Denver, where some of their guys have come from. Okay, so moving on quickly. We don't want to spend too much time on the picks that we don't rate too much.
Yeah.
Pick 6, Atlanta Hawks. But just under half of the mocks have Tyrese Halliburton going there. He's a guard. He's played Team USA. I think he played the Hoop Summit, so he's always been at the top. Iowa State this last year. $750 to get picked here, and there's a lot of word that he might get picked here. So I think that's actually worth a bet. I bet on that. Tyrese Halliburton. I guess I went first last time with a double. What's your thoughts? Is he, underhyped, overhyped? You've been following him for a while. You've talked about him before.
I've loved watching him play since he was probably 17. Just an ultimate professional. Pretty long, not too athletic. Really great basketball IQ. I have him lots of bets. I counted after we spoke before, 12 different bets for him, from 1 all the way to 7. I would win a decent amount of money if he goes in the top 3, please, but I don't think any of those teams would be that smart. I have him number 3 on my board, as the floor is so high. I can't see him being anything but a solid player, whether it's a starter or off the bench. He can contribute to a winning team, a championship team. He can hit threes. He can play off the ball. It would be a great fit for him and Trae Young. And I just put $5 on it again about 25 minutes ago. So thanks for reminding me that I need to put more of my stack on. Just a great player to watch. Coaches love him. What do you think?
Big number 3 on my board as well. And I would really love to see the Hornets, if it goes Edwards' ball, not take Wiseman, but to take this guy. Potentially, he's a star in the making. He's got the playmaking ability. I think he's probably one level below that. Maybe like kind of where CJ McCollum is like kind of a star, but not, he's not really the man, but, but he still averages over 20. And, playing alongside Trae Young can be like playing alongside Lillard. So I would be really happy if the Hawks did this. I think that would be a great piece for them. I think it's their last chance to draft this high. Capella's going to be back. Perhaps they just start getting Gordon Hayward as well. So the likelihood at this well in the lottery, if they're in the lottery at all for the next 5 years, is unlikely. So I think they should go for someone with high potential. I think that's him. I don't think they should try to draft a super solid guy to come in right now. But in saying that, it's possible that, he might be the most ready of these guards, that are not LaMelo Ball. And so maybe he would be starting. If not, he'd be the third guard. So really like him. Love his length. Think he's got good defensive tools. Great feel for the game, okay finisher. The strength will be an issue, but if you're ever going to improve your strength, it's going to be in the NBA with those trainers. I think defensively, though, he could actually end up being a really good defensive guard, perhaps like an all defensive guard, just because he's smart and he's long and he competes. So I'm a big fan of him. I could see why people like yourself had put money on him at number 1 a couple of years ago or last year. Because it's like, this could be a guy that, if it goes well for him in his college year, that is the number 1. I would love to see him go higher. I don't think he will. I expect some teams to make things that we would call a mistake. So if the Hawks can get this, that's a fantastic pick this late in the draft, and possibly the last time they're going to, pick this low, given the players that have missed time, Collins and Capella. Unlikely, unless Trae Young gets injured. I don't think you'll see them picking, in the top 10 again for a while. All right, so Detroit, again, probably don't need to spend a lot of time on this. Number 7, apparently they've promised Patrick Williams that if he's on the board and if they still have the pick, that they will pick him. You've seen a lot more of Williams than I have. I have him on my board, though, at number 5, so I like him. He's on my board up high. I think he's got that kind of, he's strong, but he plays good defense. I don't think he's super quick, so I don't think he's the wing stopper that people think. I think he's the big wing defender. He's the 4 defender. But I'm actually encouraged his offense could be okay. I'm wary of valuing these kind of tool, these guys that have these great athletic tools too high. But he's one that I really think could come on nicely. So I think it'd be really good if Detroit could get this, add to the wing stocks. But ultimately, I think there's a chance that maybe he could go at 4. But yeah, I would be happy for Detroit to do this. For me, I would even have him a bit higher than this as well. So I'd have him at 5. I love these wing stocks, or these 3-4 stocks. And he's like the prototype, potential worth gambling on. If it works out, you've got a guy that could potentially help you deep in the playoffs. If it doesn't work out, you're going to suck again next year. You have another bite at the apple, if you're Detroit. Patrick Williams, you've seen more of them than I have. What's your take?
I probably watched half of his games last year. I have him at number 4 overall. So when his number started dropping from under 9.5 to 7.5 to now at 4, he's only paying 5-1, whereas, in the teens and the 20s, thank you very much. It magically dropped somehow. Don't know how that happened. Love it.
Yeah, someone must have bet that.
Yeah. A couple people. Great verticality, even when he doesn't get the block. He knows when to swing at the ball in transition. He knows when to reach for the ball on a layup. He knows when, hey, this guy's pretty strong and pretty athletic. I'm just going to go straight up and try to bother it. He chases blocks once in a while, but much better than any other bigs in this draft. He's a professional. He takes good shots. He moves the ball when he needs to move the ball. His passing isn't great. His ball handling is not great. But I do think he can make corner threes in the future. So you need to be able to do one of those two things. You need to be a great or very good playmaker, or you got to make corner threes at a good rate. His footwork's really good. His shot looks pretty good. He makes his free throws. It's smooth. No hitches, anything. So I see some potential there. I do worry about the body as far as him moving laterally, guarding wings, as you said before. Great 4 defender. There's that 11% chance the body gets even better, and he's Ron Artest is kind of his ceiling, I would say, for me. A great team player who can make some threes, who's going to be a man chasing people around. He might not have that much lateral agility in him, and he might get even bigger and a little bit slower as he gets older. So, love him 3rd year through 7th year, and then before and after that, who really knows? Thanks for the value.
Yeah, we definitely want Williams to go in number 4. We picked that up before the bookie, adjusted that, and we're big on him. But also, if he goes 7, I think we basically, I'll come out even because I think I bet all the profit there on, or there would be profit on number 4. So we really want to see Williams do well for our own, selfish reasons. But the next one, I think we do disagree. I know it came up before. The 8th pick, the New York Knicks. Okay, they got a new start. They got a new staff in. Maybe they're gonna, think of the future. Maybe they're gonna do the right thing, or maybe they're gonna trade this pick for Russell Westbrook and take him into cap space. So let's just hope the Knicks just cool down and make a good pick here. But Killian Hayes is the most mocked pick for this. I'm not a huge fan. I think he's massively overrated because people are getting Luka madness. But in saying that, I have him 6 on my board here. I think he can be a low-end starter or possibly quite a good player off the bench, like Jeremy Clarkson type. So when I say he's overrated, I don't think he's a bust. But I think there's I forget the writer, but one of the writers at ESPN had him number 1 in talent in the draft. I'm like, you need to stop watching Luka highlights. This guy's not Luka Doncic. So I'm not as high on him, but in saying that, I'm not that low on him. I think he is obviously super skillful. He's smart. But, I think the slowness is an issue, and I don't think he has that amazing stopping ability like Luka or even like Edwards or like Harden. So I'm not high on him. But like I said, a low-end starter to a high-end bench, that's not that bad with the number 8 pick. You'd like to have a solid starter, but it's not a complete bust at number 8, if you've got a guy who can contribute. But I think you're on Team Hayes, right? You like him.
I do. I like him. I think I'd be, in between I believe you're thinking of Kevin O'Connor, the Ringer has him number 1, probably a few ESPN people as well. And I was like, how? What have you been watching? I don't understand what you've been watching. And I'm a fan. He can only dribble with one hand. Even when he does dribble right, he'll still finish left back into the defender's face. Has to get that floater up a mile to get it through. But it goes in. Step back 3 both ways, looks really, really fluid. He moves the ball well. And what I really liked in the games that I watched was close games his teammates trusted him. They swung the ball to him. He's playing in these tight games. He's making shots and making plays in these tight games. He even rotated defensively pretty well, even if his individual defense, he got posted quite a few times. Pick and rolls especially, he's going to be a disaster. The New York Knicks were once gifted, the New York City was once gifted the Statue of Liberty, and the Knicks should harp for another French import of Killian Hayes. I think they're waiting on Hayes, Halliburton, Ball. They don't get any of those, they're going to get Westbrook.
Yeah, I could just see it would be peak Knicks to take Westbrook into their cap space. If they give up an asset to do that, would just be a disaster. Yeah. They should be asking for some kind of assets from Houston who don't have any to really give up. But, all jokes aside, surely they won't take Westbrook, surely. So I think Killian Hayes, I think I'm not that low on him, but I love to preface it to be I just think he is overrated. It's people fall in love with it. And the next guy on the board, I think, is a classic example of people falling in love with a certain type of player. 9, Washington Wizards, is Onyeka Okongwu. He's a center. He's 6'9", and some people say he's the best big man in the draft. I say to those people, he's not Bam Adebayo, and he's just not, And he's got some tools, and I think it is fair to say he's the second best big in the draft. But I think it's that same thing. People are falling in love with a unique and a new style of player in Bam, and they think, this guy's like Bam too. Or we had Draymond Green a few years ago. You got Luka now with Killian Hayes. Steph Curry's the other one. Every guard who can shoot's the next Steph Curry. They're like, nah, man, he's just a guard that takes bad shots. It's not Steph Curry. It's very different, So I think there's a bit of that happening here.
That's Malik Monk.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think, there seems to be a lot of evidence that these is a match, Onyeka and Washington. I don't like it. I think the Wizards should be looking to draft different wings and this and that. But at the same time, I think this guy, probably most likely is going to be a top 15 center, or definitely I think a top 20 center. His high end is probably if it goes really, really well, maybe potential defensive player of the year or all defensive. I'd say that's his absolute high end. But again, it's just how do you value a center? This is the kind of time you could start thinking about taking one, but I'd probably even push it. I don't really want to take one in the lottery, So unless there's really, if there's evidence they should be taken in the very top few, maybe. But in this kind of thing, I'd rather be gambling on 3-and-D wings if there's not an overload of guards. So I don't like the value play here, but I like the player, and I think he probably will be a very good NBA center. Which obviously we've said it a million times. Just don't think it's the right thing to be doing with a number 9 pick. But especially the Wizards, who potentially could be looking at maybe the 8th seed this year. So your team, your potential pick, what do you want to see your team do, and what do you think of this young man?
Any 3-and-D wing, please, with Avija and Toppin going early, most likely. Some talent is going to drop that I actually like. Please draft a wing over a big. We can sign a big. You'll be able to find bigs. You can get bigs for your mid-level
and not hit the luxury tax. You can get two bigs even for $7-10 million total for a year or two with some options, and you'll be fine. You'll be stable. You can get that 8th seed and hopefully get a little more defense around Rui, Beal, and Wall. Rui's never played good defense ever, even in his international career at under 19, getting posted by randoms. Beal hasn't played defense in a year and a half, and Wall obviously for quite a while. They're going to take a pick. I was very optimistic a few days ago. Not optimistic anymore. They're probably taking Ngongru, who I like. I'd be fine watching him. It's a good thing that they're not going to be fans in the seats because he's not going to sell any tickets. You should try and. So this is the year to take the boring player, and everyone's fine with it. Please take away.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an awful pick, but it's just I just think there's just much better value out there, and we're kind of going to lead right into that with the guy who's mocked at number 10 in about a quarter of the drafts, but it's number 10, Phoenix Suns, Isaac Okoro, who I really like. I have a number 4 on my board. I think of those potential 3-and-Ds, I think he has the most potential, and so obviously we already talked that we both like Patrick Williams. Killian Hayes is a bit different, but I definitely like Okoro more than I like both of those guys. So I have him at 4. But there's potential for sliding. So your Washington Wizards potentially could pick up Okoro. Phoenix getting Okoro, that could be a really nice piece as they're going towards playoffs. And he can defend now. There's room for guys who can defend in the NBA playoffs pretty much straight away. And if he can defend by the end of the season in the NBA, which he's really a great defender, but if he can defend, and shut guys down and, shut down key actions, and Phoenix are in the playoffs, this is the kind of guy that could, as a rookie, be getting some minutes in the playoffs, with an assignment. So, and they've got Bridges, they're starting to build some really nice wing depth. If they can wing/forward, defensive depth, if they can add this guy, I really, really like it. So I have him really high on my board, number 4. I would hope that he goes higher, like Cleveland take him, It looks like Detroit and Atlanta, they have some guys we really like, but I'd love to see Chicago or Cleveland add to the stocks of these wing players who are so valuable. So that's my spiel on Isaac Okoro. Big fan. I actually think his offense is going to be fine too, but I think defensively, you want to talk 3-and-D, this guy's going to be more than that. I think he's definitely going to be a D. I think he's probably going to be a 3, and I think he's going to do a few other things. I think he can help playoff teams win. I think he can have a long career, starting 3-and-D. Your Trevor Arizas, all these kind of guys. Not as big as those, so he's a bit more guard style, but I really like this one. Number 4 on my board. I think he's massively underrated. Are you on the Okoro train?
I very much am. I have him 5, as I had Patrick Williams 4. One more thing I want to ask you before I get into Okoro. For Ngongru, if Bam Adebayo is just on the team and Jimmy Butler never signs, Ngongru doesn't get rated as high because there's not that comparison, even though Adebayo is probably just as good of a player. So one player going to one team and making them good suddenly makes another college prospect better. I don't really see the logic in that. It's quite a weird jump in logic that these teams and these writers do, which I've never really gotten. It's so out of context.
Yeah, they make these connections, and I don't think the connections are there. I think players are more unique than they are the same, and even players that are similar don't have similar impacts. Because I play a certain style doesn't mean I'm going to impact the team the same way, So which we've seen for the most part. And I think this is a classic one. What are the chances that another 6'9" undersized center is going to be okay as a backup, show some signs, and then someone gets injured, and next thing you know, he's an all-star, which is what happened with Bam. He started the last 15 games of the season and the next season, and was an all-star. It's what are the chances that that's only happened once with this undersized guy, that now it's going to happen again? So I just think, you can't read too much into the past players, you can look at what works. Oh, yeah, okay, this skill works, this skill works, this skill works. this attitude works, but I don't think he'd be like, oh, he's 6'9" and he has a similar rebound percentage, and he kind of looks like him. Oh, yeah, he's going to be the same.
Yeah.
So, I definitely think they need to disconnect it.
For sure.
For sure.
Anyway, I'll get back on topic. Isaac Okoro, really like him. 1 through 3 defender. Mainly, as you said before, going to guard 2s is probably best, but can guard 3s, can guard 1s on a switch, can guard 4s on a switch. He played high post on offense at Auburn. He said no one else. He attacked the rim. He can dribble really. He even seems better with his left hand than his right hand. I somewhat worry about his right hand dribbling, to be honest. The shot looks good. The percentages aren't amazing, but there's no hitches. It's more of a timing thing that I think he can work his way through. I think being with NBA coaches is going to help him. Being with better players is going to help him. He's going to be open, most likely, on a lot of these teams in his role as that 3 and D. I would, as I said before, take him in that top 5. Please let him fall to 9. I can see this exact mock happening, and the Wizards don't take him, and he goes to Phoenix at 10, and he actually contributes and is, one of the top 5 rookies next year, even being a 19-year-old.
Yeah, definitely. So, is there any other rookies who kind of didn't make this mock that you think really are worth mentioning, that are possibly going to stand out, or even in a couple of years you think could actually, have shown, hey, look, I was a lot better than not being in the top 10. Anyone we're really missing that we should know about?
Sadiq Bey, I really liked watching him play at Villanova. He doesn't really have much star potential due to a bit of a funky, small sample size as well shot. Made a lot of threes at Villanova, though. Really well coached. Knows how to play. Going to be a really good role player. Not much off the bounce, but I really like him in the mid-teens, late 20s as someone who you can rely on. Maybe not this year, but second year, third year, fourth year, he's going to make shots in important games. Comes to playing important games. I also have RJ Hampton, who played for the New Zealand Breakers. I watched every single one of his games until he got hurt. He's going to have a role in any team in the NBA for the next 10 years. It's interesting that he plays quite an aggressive style, but doesn't actually take many shots. Not a good shooter, not a confident shooter. Plays pretty good defense, but a bit lost. Going to be a professional, going to be able to handle the ball and possibly be a tweener. Leandro Barbosa kind of type without the shooting is kind of his floor. Whereas if he does learn to shoot, he could be a starting guard. Maybe not as good as Drew Holiday, but near there. I don't see it actually happening. Very small percentage, but I quite like it. Did you watch much of RJ Hampton last year?
Yeah, I a bit of him. I was like kind of impressed, but not that impressed. I thought he was just so young and he showed flashes, and that's kind of what you could hope for.
Yeah.
So I'm not sold on him. I'm definitely not sold on him, but I think playing over here like a lot better than playing in the NCAA. The standard's a lot better. I mean, I know some of the coaches that were on that one. I'm like, better than most NCAA coaches, like by a lot. Not like maybe not Coach K and Bill Self and this and that, but the level of competition. So I think that's definitely helpful.
Go.
I guess that kind of brings us to the next point, which is that the timing for these rookies is so different to any other season, where the draft's normally like 23rd of June or whatever it might be, and then 3 to 4 weeks later you've got summer league and kind of free agency is happening before then, so you've got a bit of an idea of what your role is going to be and where you're going. And then you finish summer league, you have a little bit of time off, and you've got pre-seasons, you've got all these kind of intervals where you can work on stuff and get ready. This time it's like drafts on the 18th, season starts on the 22nd. So are they going to be undercooked because they haven't had those like baby steps of summer league, camp, preseason games, early season? Or is it going to be like actually, counterintuitive? They're actually just going to be really, really good by the end of the season because they didn't muck around with that low, baby kind of steps. They just went straight in the deep end, and probably different for different players. But I think it'll be interesting. I'm not sure that they're going to be undercooked. Maybe the first month they might be, but I think they actually might benefit from going straight into the season and not mucking around too much. But I could definitely see it being hard for some players. I mean, have you kind of thought about that and what that might mean? And is there any one you think that could really benefit from that, or that might kind of crumble under that pressure?
No, I didn't actually think about that until you brought it up. I think it's going to be interesting for someone like a James Wiseman, who didn't have too much experience, didn't get reps against people his own size, didn't learn how to rotate at an NBA or really even a college level, really just in high school and an AAU level. And Golden State is supposed to take him and expect him to be ready by the playoffs. That's a tough ask in their preseason. Whereas someone like LaMelo Ball or someone like Denny Avdija, they're used to playing. They've been playing as professionals for a while now, for both of them, which is surprising to say about such young players. But both have been pros for 2-3 years, with only good things said from their teammates. Nothing negative at all, which, as we said before, very surprising for LaMelo. But I think he's going to hit the ground running. I think some of the older players, Tyrese Halliburton's going to hit the ground running, whereas some of these other players, it could affect them quite a bit if they're not either physically or mentally ready for the game. More mentally, as I think it's possible some of these vets are resting on half the back-to-backs in the first half of the season. I can't see LeBron playing any back-to-backs first half of the season at all.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting, actually, because I don't rate Denny that highly, but it could be that he's one of the better rookies, because playing for Maccabi, that's a lot of pressure. He will lead them to the under-20, Israel to the under-20 Euros. So I feel like he's dealt with a lot of pressure and he's played Euro League. So maybe, I'm not sure how far he's going to develop, but maybe he'll be, quite good in terms of the rookies this year. That's an interesting point. I'm going to have to look at some Rookie of the Year action for him. Because depending how much he slides, it might be okay. If he goes 4, it might not be the value.
Yeah. If he goes where he should go.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I think that pretty much that's our hour done. So everyone that's obviously listening can read your work at blackswanbets.com under the news section. Seppo's NFL previews, Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football. Sundays you do a podcast, the Big Appel Collective with Caveman, with Ray. I think you break it up every game individually and one whole big one. So if people just want to listen to one game, they don't have to trawl through 90 minutes of podcast. But for those of us who like to listen to the whole thing and pick out the bets, we can listen to the whole thing, right?
Exactly. So we watch every single play from every single game. So we are very, very informed. We look at all the stats. It's going to be very interesting when the NBA and college basketball comes around, and I have to find out how much of these games I can actually fit in and watch and still feel good about my picks, because totals are a lot of feel and pace and matchups, and you really have to know what's going on for those. But if you do, you're going to have quite an edge, because people don't know them that well. They like betting spreads, and they know spreads better. They just kind of chuck money at totals because it's there. So don't know how that's going to work. Love doing the podcast with Caveman. He's very unpredictable. He's behaved himself quite well. Love doing the write-ups, but Caveman's write-ups are just the best.
Yeah, they're a different beast. They're half comedy, half profitable bets. So definitely, when you put out a total, I bet it. I don't ask questions, so I've learned to trust that. Black Swan Bets, you can hear our podcast on our YouTube channel, Black Swan Bets, or wherever you get your podcasts, and the Big Appel, wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, we are giving away $1,000 on our YouTube channel once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we're going to give away $1,000 bet. So head to our YouTube to see the terms and conditions for that, and make sure you subscribe to that, and you'll be able to give yourself a chance to win that. Other than that, blackswanbets.com for any questions you have, and we'll see how we go in the draft tomorrow. All right, thanks very much, Luke.
Thanks, man.